Okay, so put a seatbelt on, always a good thing, and let's unplug all these little cables that are hanging around, because we don't need so many cables. Might need sunglasses, always useful, handy. And let's see. Okay, so the aim is to create some videos, not about the cars that everyone else is making. You can go to plenty of other experts who will tell you about how fast a car is and 0 to 60 and its road handling and all that, but do we really use the car for that purpose every single day? You take it on a racetrack once in a while, but you don't do it on a regular basis, not every day. So I'm trying to make this video just to make it more real, to say what we do, how do I feel like when I drive this car during the day, every day, and the kind of things that I guess you don't find in normal videos, which is why I thought I should make one. Right, so let's start. So this particular car is a 991 Carrera 911, and it is a Carrera S, 400 brake horsepower. It's a sports car that you can use every day, but I would really like to know how many people use this car as a sports car. I think most of us buy it because it's fun, it's fast, it's beautiful, it's designed well, and that's pretty much it. I'm sure that 90% of Porsche owners don't really take it on a track, which is fine, but just thought I'd put it out there. Now, it's a small car, so it fits into most parking spaces. You can get through little narrow gaps, which I guess if you were driving a Lamborghini or a Ferrari, they are slightly different, but then they're a different range of car as well. But I'm just thinking of a sports car kind of element. So with that respect, it is quite small and easy to maneuver in town. However, the rear is much wider than the front, so when you're parking, it's very easy to scratch the rear wheels because you're not straight really, but I guess you get used to it. Parking sensors help. If you had cameras, that might be better. I had a Panamera which had cameras, but it's a much bigger car, so you definitely need the cameras, whereas this one is quite small, so you can just turn your head around and have a look. But as you can hear the beeps, this is just a constant headache, because everywhere you go, whenever there's traffic in front of you, you stop, or if a guy on a bike or a bicycle goes past and he's too close, the car beeps to tell you that someone's too close, as if you can't see. But it's a safety thing, so it's alright. Living in London, one of the biggest problems is you never go above 20 miles an hour. The speed limit is 30, but it's very hard to drive it at 30 constantly, or even for an extended period. Half of the time, or 70% of the time, you're just crawling, stuck through traffic. So you don't really feel the difference if you're driving a Porsche or an ordinary car, because you're just crawling along. In terms of the comfort, I think it's quite important to note that Porsche have done an amazing job on this model, specifically the 991. They've extended the wheelbase, and I think they've improve the suspension, because I've had 997s, 996s, 993s. This is definitely a real big leap forward in terms of comfort. You can stiffen the suspension, and that makes you feel like the old 997. But I only do that if I'm on a motorway and you need to drive a little faster, and the road's not very smooth, because it gives you the extra traction. But otherwise, there is no need for that. The comfort hasn't compromised the drive and the stability of the car, so that's great. But by the way, on a side note, I test drove a Macan today. I was very intrigued by Porsche going into the mini SUV segment, and apparently it's one of their best-selling cars, and there's a 3-month lead time for the diesels and between 18 months to 2 years on the petrol and the turbo versions. I guess it's in a good price bracket for those who want SUVs and a Porsche. It gives you the badge and the practicality, but it's not very expensive compared to the other cars. So I guess that's why it's very popular. Also, I think with the Cayenne, they made a big beast that wasn't very attractive looking, and with the Macan, I think they've just got it right. It looks really good, drives really well. Comparing it to other SUVs, I've only had Range Rovers. I've never owned a mini SUV, so it's very hard for me to compare. It feels like you're driving a car that's slightly higher up, and it drives really well, but it's not as comfortable as the Range Rover, and I'll do another review on the Range Rover so you guys can see what I mean. But yeah, back to this car. It's got excellent gadgets. It's got so many extras. Well, they get at a cost. So Porsche don't give you anything for free. Even the little round caps that go in the middle of the wheel cost you £110. So nothing is free, but the things that you want, you can customize it. They say no two Porsches are identical because people order them to their specification, which is great. This one is a Carrera S with Tiptronic. No, not Tiptronic. This is a PDK transmission, and it's got a sunroof, leather. I like this old-fashioned brownish coffee tobacco kind of, maybe a cigar kind of leather. It's agate grey on the outside, and I have Bose sat nav, which is kind of standard that I guess you need one. It's called Porsche Communication Management System. Everything has a P behind it. PCM, PDK, PSE, Porsche Sports Exhaust. Oh yeah, that's a very important thing. Every car that you buy from Porsche, if you want to have good resale, you have to have a sports exhaust. Completely transforms the sound of the car, makes it so much better. And what else can I tell you? I just saw one of my work colleagues walking past. Very bizarre. I didn't realize he lives near me. Anyway, so yeah, driving around London, it's a nice city to live in, and you can enjoy nice cars here because it is such a busy city with so many cars, and everyone's got a decent enough car, so you don't stand out and you don't attract unnecessary attention that you may do if you lived in a small town somewhere. So there's way too many Porsches and Ferraris and Lamborghinis and you name it. They're everywhere. So it's quite a subtle thinking of the right word. It's hard to speak in front of the camera, especially when it's my first time. So the word that I'm looking for is quite understated. It's an understated car. It's not very flashy. It's nice and fast. You enjoy it, but it's not too in your face to say, yeah, look at me, I'm a Porsche. I don't like cars with big spoilers or anything, so that's another positive thing with the Porsches, that if you don't go for a turbo, you don't get those massive big spoilers at the back that really spoil the car, to be honest. I don't see the point of them. I like these retractable ones that come out when you need them and disappear. So, yeah. What are the other cool things? So, it's got a nice, really nice dash. It has all the right dials that you need. It's got the standard, typical signature thing in the middle for Porsche, which is having your tachometer, as the Americans call it, and the rev counter, as the English call it, in front of you, which is what you really need. You need to know how your engine is performing rather than how fast you're going. Of course, there's the speedometer that gives you the speed underneath as well, the digital one. It has the temperature gauge for the engine temperature. It's got the oil temperature gauge, oil pressure gauge, and obviously the fuel. What the really nice thing they've done in this particular model is that one of the dials is actually an LCD screen, so you can flick through this little stalk and change the screen to display whatever you need. And if you're in the sat-nav mode, it automatically changes to, at the next junction or at the next turn, it will automatically change the view to show you the sat-nav, which is quite handy, so you don't have to look at the screen in the middle, which is, although it's not very far, it doesn't really matter, but you get my drift. But otherwise, you can see your phone status, your date, time. You can customize it to the kind of things you want to see. You can see the tire pressures if you have the tire pressure sensors. Right, okay. Okay, so it's a nice sunny day today in London, so I thought I should go out and make a video. Hopefully it won't be quite as dull and grey. It was a bit overcast this morning and very foggy, but as the fog's lifting, it's quite bright. So hopefully that will be good. I'm absolutely starving because I woke up very early this morning and had to go to the Porsche dealership to test drive the Macan, and I've only had coffees and not much food, actually no food at all. So I'm gonna have to go somewhere and get some food. But in the meantime, I'm here, I'm talking to you. Hope you are enjoying the journey, or the ride with me, whichever you like. So in terms of the Carrera being a four-seater, it's not quite a four-seater. It just gives you that psychological effect and that psychological comfort that you have a four-seater car. You can only put kids in the back or really short people, and even they're uncomfortable. And obviously you have to push the seats forward so the front passengers feel a bit tight when someone's sitting in the back. It's good when you're going on a slightly longer trip. You can fold the seats down and put various bits and bobs or your bags, because obviously the boot isn't big enough. But overall it feels better inside, because you don't have, like the Boxster, it ends here, so suddenly you feel like, you know, you're choked in this little cabin. Whereas in this car, you don't feel choked. You feel like you have some space behind you, and it's big enough, even though in reality it isn't big enough. But hey ho, you don't buy a Porsche to have a lot of space inside. You'd buy a BMW Touring, or an Audi Estate, or one of those cars that has a lot of space in the back. As you can see, I've been driving for about 3-4 miles now, and haven't been able to pick up any speed, because everywhere you go in London, it's just chock-a-block. It's crazy, whether it's Saturday, Sunday, or 2 o'clock in the morning on a weekday. This city never sleeps. Whoever says New York is the city that doesn't sleep hasn't been to London. I've been to New York many times, and I must say, in the middle of the night, you're fine. It's only a few taxis and a few cars. But in London, it's constant traffic. It's crazy. I don't even know what people do in the middle of the night, because everyone seems to be out and about. Anyway, going back to the reviews of the car, which is where I was. I started waffling and rambling and talking, but I've been doing, I don't know, an average of 12 miles an hour according to the car, and it's giving me 16 miles to a gallon. Not too bad for a sports car. I've done 4 miles in 20 minutes. So normally I think most of the cars that I like and I enjoy driving do about 20 miles to a gallon. So 16 or 18 or 20 is not too bad. I mean, in the city. Obviously, once you hit a motorway, it's a completely different story. It becomes much nicer and faster to drive, and the fuel consumption is very good as well. Right, let's hope this traffic changes a bit so I can put my foot down and drive this car. Maybe I'll need to take you guys onto the motorway. The other good thing about this car is, despite the fact it's a sports car, it's not noisy. And yes, when you switch on the sports exhaust, it has the most beautiful grunt, and it produces amazing sound. But in general, it's fairly quiet. When you're playing music, it's brilliant. And because it's a small cabin, and if you have a decent enough sound system, I mean, I must say that standard Porsche entry-level sound systems are great. So if you have a little bit of extra money and you want something that is a bit more of an audiophiles area, then get the Bose unit. It gives you the ability to alter a bit more. But I must say, the basic entry-level system is great. And the Burnmeister system, which costs about £3,000, I'm not entirely sure what benefit it gives you. I've heard it play, but when you're in a sports car, most of the time you turn off the music because you want to listen to the car. You don't want to listen to this music. But I guess some people want to have both. But yeah, for me, I'm happy with the Bose because it does the trick, and it's not overly pricey. So, I mean, with these cars, the entry-level car is about, I think, £74,000, and by the time you've put the things that you want in the car, it's £95,000. So very easily you've added £20,000 on top of the car's entry-level price, which is a bit too much. So adding a £3,000 sound system is a bit ridiculous. I don't know if you'll recover that when you're selling it, because, well, the salespeople will tell you that, oh, each and every one of these extras is valuable, and then when you're selling it, it changes the price of the car. Yes, to a degree, marginally you can say one car may be slightly more expensive than the other because it has bigger wheels or a PDK transmission. In general, it doesn't make that much of a difference. So only get the things that you think you're going to enjoy while you own the car. Otherwise, don't. In this car, I have everything that I really like. So I have this brushed aluminium finishing all around. I have a sports steering wheel, which I really like. I don't like buttons on my wheel, so the standard wheels I think have too many buttons, or maybe not, but I chose this specific one because I want the steering wheel to be clean and beautiful. PDK, I was torn because I love manual cars, and especially sports cars, and PDK was a difficult one. I was convinced by others that you can drive this in manual and you have the option of an automatic car, and since I live in London, I thought I'm going to be stuck in traffic all the time, so might as well not destroy my shoes and destroy the clutch. So buy a PDK. I'm not disappointed by it, but I'm not excited by it either. I think it's a nice thing, but there's no comparison with a manual. I don't know, you just feel so connected with a manual car. You're one with the road, you're one with the car. It gives you that feeling of control that PDKs and automatics don't. So yeah, I had the sat nav. Obviously, I think that's kind of standard in these models. 20-inch alloy wheels, and this leather and the combination is quite unique. My plan is to keep this car for a long, long time, because this is one of the last naturally aspirated engines. So Porsche have stopped making these engines, and now they're making 3-liter turbos, which are better on fuel economy and apparently more torque at low revs. But I'm a purist when it comes to such cars, and I thought it would be useful for me to buy one when they're not one of the last ones that they're making. So this one is a 3.8 litre 6-cylinder, it's a straight 6, I think, 400 brake horsepower, naturally aspirated engine. Yeah, it doesn't give you the full torque until about 5,000 revs, but it is beautiful. You get the real feel of the car's engine revving and picking up power, and it gets to 5,000 revs and it becomes a bullet. So it's great, but I haven't yet driven the new models, which is the 991 Generation 2 with the 3-litre twin-turbo engine. But I'm booking in a test drive in a couple of weeks, so I'm going to try and see what I think of that. But from my point of view, I don't really like the sound of the turbos whizzing in the background, and from standing next to those cars I could hear the turbos, and that kind of bothers me. I like the engine to sound just the engine rather than a turbine whizzing alongside, because that's what you hear and expect from diesel engines. So let's see what it's like, because maybe when you switch on the sports exhaust and the turbo doesn't make as much noise as I believe it will. We'll see. I'm not convinced yet, but I might be proved wrong, so we'll see. So I live in the south side of the river in South London, I'm now crossing the bridge to the north side and heading over to Chelsea, where I hope the streets are not going to be as packed. Apparently there's some stuff going on in central London around Westminster, so there's some road closures and it would be pointless going into that part of town, so I'm going to stick to sort of West London. And London drivers are a bit crazy. If you go to the countryside and if you drive around other parts of England, people are very respectful of others, they're nice and they're patient. In London, everyone's in a rush because you spend so much time stuck in traffic that you get a bit exhausted by it, and you end up thinking, right, I'm just going to go as quickly as I can through the little gaps that I find, and everyone's all over the place. So it's a bit frustrating, but you get used to it, and after a while you stop caring about the rudeness of other drivers. Okay, so looks like there's some roadworks here causing all the traffic to merge into one lane, and I don't know why people don't go till the end of the sign where the cones are. They start changing lanes, causing an even bigger traffic jam. Anyway, this decent person behind me let me through, so I feel a bit relieved. Sorry, I had to put my glasses on because there's so much glare. There's a bit of fog with sun behind it, and somehow the light's quite glary. Little sports button or sport button, very lovely, very handy. It somehow reprograms or resets the ECU, the engine control management system, to become sporty and more efficient. It increases the fan speed of the car, making it cool the engine much more, so that as you rev through it, it doesn't heat up so much, and it changes the gear ratios. It makes it quite fun to drive, and therefore I think it's a good idea to sometimes use it in town, even though people believe that it's for a racetrack or something. It just gives you that little extra power and that ability to be more nimble, and the car gets through places faster and quicker than it normally would. Okay, 34 minutes later, we have done 6.6 miles, and the average speed is 12 miles per hour. There was an advert on the Tube London Underground at one point which said that in 1904 or something like that, the average speed of traffic in London, which was horse-drawn carriages, I think 4 miles an hour or something, or 11 miles an hour, I can't remember exactly, and now we're in 2016 and it's still the same. Shocking, isn't it? The greatest thing about this car that I absolutely love is that it doesn't attract attention. If I was driving around in an Aston Martin, a Ferrari, a Lamborghini, or any of the other sports cars, people look at you. Whereas in this car, there's so many of them, it's just so understated. No one cares that you're driving a sports car. And that's what I absolutely love about this car. I don't like attracting attention, and this just does it. It drives well, handles well, performs well, it's efficient fuel-wise, and it's comfortable to a degree. It does everything that I want a car to do for me, so yeah. This is, for me, a perfect car. I know it's a very big statement to make, but I'm absolutely sure that I love this car more than any other car that I've owned or want. I think perhaps if I bought a manual one and I lived in a different city, I'd be a tiny bit more content and happy. But look, here's another sister. Blue with beige leather interior. Very creative. I think it's mainly the Porsche dealers who keep telling people to buy black interiors and grey interiors and keep them looking standard and boring as hell. Here, another one. Terracotta interior, navy blue. Every other Porsche that you see is either silver, black or blue with all these boring interiors. I don't really understand why would anyone do that. It's nice to have something different. So, okay, I'm gonna park here for a little bit and go get myself some food before I faint and die. Oh. See, a very, very tight space, but parking sensors and my driving skills.